Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. This is Black Heart, signing black in again, asking you to hit that share button even before you hit the like or the subscribe button, because the message is more important than the messenger. And if it wasn't, I would not record this. Listen, when I record these messages, I'm recording them so that, number one, sisters don't go driving away, especially inadvertently, driving away men that they want to keep. Now, if sisters don't want a particular guy, then I'm not telling them to stay with that man. I'm simply saying that I try to help them to not inadvertently, unknowingly, and unintentionally drive away the men that they would like to keep. Try to help them avoid that. That's important. But I'm also helping the men as best I can to avoid being, them being confused and taken an unfair advantage of. Pretty much to avoid being taken advantage of, even if it's fair nowadays at this point, because as we know, what's his is hers and what's hers is hers. And a lot of today's women want to extend that to the vagina as well, until of course they come across the guy who's done the least to earn any sort of sexual affection from them, in which case they go all out and what's hers is his. We know now that the stance of the post-third wave feminist woman at this point, or post-third wave feminism woman at this point, who may or may not call herself a feminist, is to charge the good guy, the guy who's husband material, so that the guy who's strictly side piece material or side nigga material can hit it for free. And so I record these things with good intentions. I record them with harmless intentions. Problem comes about later on, that many women will hear what I'm saying, and they will assume that, one, I mean some kind of harm, and I don't. And number two, a lot of these women will assume that I'm saying something that I'm not saying, and they will make these assumptions without even so much as listening to the whole recording. They will hear some of it. They'll listen to the first few minutes, and then they want to start correcting me and telling me things. And I'm not talking about on my channel either. I'm talking about even in face-to-face life. And so when I tell quite a few of them that what I'm not going to do is nod my head in approval when they sit up here and say things to men that these men are going to lose out for obeying later on. I'm not going to nod my head in approval and say, yeah, that's right, when they start telling these men, even if it's their own sons, that girls like nice boys, and girls like boys who don't tell lies, and that women don't like guys that are dogs. No, women don't like short or broke guys that are dogs. Women don't like socially awkward guys that are dogs. They don't care. You can be as much of a dog as you want to be if you got the ducats, or you got the height, or you just have enough experience with other women to justify her telling her friends that even though you just one of many notches on her belt, it's okay because you have other notches on your belt too. You got options. You weren't the only one that was willing to sleep with this guy. And this is what's hard for a lot of women to understand. I don't want to hear this, but it's hard for them to understand that in reality, it doesn't really matter if you are a man's one and only. It doesn't mean that you're better or worse. But a lot of them do follow this, and this is a subconscious thing. And so I think that men need to be more that way. we're somewhat that way, only regarding a few things, a few traits that you may find in women, but I think we need to be that way a lot more. I think we need to start telling a lot of these ladies in no uncertain terms that no, if no other man wants to hit that, I don't either. And if I don't want to hit it, I'm not sharing this bag with you. I'm going to share it with a woman I do want to stick it in. And that's the gist of it. And this is how we have to do it. Now, these things can go a lot differently between men and women, but it depends on, one, how honest women are going to be even about the things that are not flattering of them, that don't make them seem like these pure and demure saints, that show that they're not always the victim. Matter of fact, a lot of times they're not. And that men are more likely to be the victim than the women are because, well, let's face it, it's not necessarily that men are just automatically more innocent, but because men are just not as wise to women as women are to men. Because, see, men don't know women the way that women know men. We ain't no secret. If anything, our simplicity is what's overestimated by women. We have been trained to overestimate women's complication. We've been trained to underestimate their simplicity and overestimate their complexity. And they're trained to underestimate our complexity and overestimate our simplicity. But the thing is, we are simple, and so we're not that difficult to figure out for them. They're the ones who understand us more. So when women come in real life or on my channel and they make these comments that show me that they have not heard the whole clip of what I'm saying, I'm going to know something that is very unflattering about these women. And nobody wants to hear this said about themselves, but it is true. That's not an adult woman. It's not. Cannot be. Why would I say something that nasty? It's simple. You mess around here as a man and just lose your job through no fault of yours. And you a black heterosexual man, so you're going to face difficulty finding another job to replace your old job. And everyone can't be an entrepreneur, and every entrepreneur can't be successful. So you go through this rough patch, which you're likely to have to go through because you're black and heterosexual, and the woman that's with you is not going to call you a man much longer. The countdown starts as soon as she finds out. Chris Rock said it. It was truth, funny, but true. The countdown starts then. And when you run out of money, she's not going to say, God damn these crackers. Because I know these white men ain't having a hard time bouncing back from a layoff like you are. And they don't get laid off as often as our men do. They don't say that, no. See, it used to be sisters did understand this. And while it did frustrate them to go through this, they weren't necessarily out there blaming the men because they got laid off. They knew that the blame lied with that damn cracker. And if they were going to leave, they had to admit, I just can't deal with this. But you're not the one that caused it. They knew they were going to have to admit this at some point. Nowadays, sisters want to act like racism is over when black men talk about it, but then sisters want to act like racism is still alive and well if the victim of racism is black. They want to say, yeah, there's such a thing as misogynoir, a hatred directed strictly towards black women. They'll say that this exists, but you start talking about misandronoir, which is a hatred towards black men, and what are you going to find? They're going to act like it doesn't exist. Stop being a bitch and making excuses. You black men are weak and pathetic. This white man got his foot on your neck. Because you ain't no man. It's always your fault. Now, I'm not saying every black woman's like this. I'm telling you that the ones that are like this aren't women. That's what I'm telling you. Because you can always get a little girl to blame an innocent man or an innocent boy for what happened to them, for what they didn't do, for what they didn't cause. Always. You can get that to happen. It was Richard Cooper pretty much said, women don't care about your struggles. They don't care. They're going to wait at the finish line and F the winner. What I'm going to say is, that might be in the nature of a woman, but that's the behavior of a little girl, unless, of course, the woman is going to say, that's what I'm going to do, but here's what I'm going to do in exchange for it. We're not dealing with that. In our community and in their community, that's not what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with is exactly what he said. You got these adult females waiting at finish lines to screw the winners, and nothing less, and they're not offering anything for it. It's supposed to be free. The winning man is supposed to be free to them. Even though a winning man by definition has to be rare. And even though there's nothing rare and unique about most of these women. Well, should I say these overgrown girls. These women are going to tell you, black men, that you ain't a man and it's going to be based on things you don't control. I'm going to tell you that you ain't no little boys, but we are dealing with a whole bunch of little girls. I don't say this because I hate them. It's not in my interest to hate black women, especially just for being black women. What I am going to say is, like I said a few days ago, Western men, and that includes Western black men, are superior to Western women, morally speaking, because, well, frankly, not only has the society forced us to be, but even if the society tried to force women to be, they just wouldn't do it. Not the ones that are out there now, not these little girls. They're not going to accept that kind of accountability. It's never their fault. And see, in some parts of this nation in which I live, which is very conservative, by the way, sexually very conservative, many have this assumption that if a guy fornicates, nobody's going to punish him, and not even the king would do it, but that if a woman fornicates, everyone's going to blame her. Well, society can be pretty hard on the women and on the men that fornicate. That is very true. But let me tell you what happens in some of these backwards villages, though. You get in some of these villages away from any city, and there is no mental development. Not only is there no development, but there isn't even any mental development. You got ambulances that sit out there, and what are those ambulances for? They pick you up, stabilize you, and drive you to a hospital in the city. It may be an hour away. They'll keep you stable in the meantime. Hey, you chose to live in a village, and these are Bedouins. Bedouins, you think African Americans are bad about education? No, the Bedouins, and that's going to be the topic of my next video, these Bedouins suck. I could go on for hours about how bad of people they are. If there was ever people that deserved to go through what we went through, the Bedouins came close to it. But that's another topic for another recording. When you're out there in these villages, there are these men who completely break the norm. Whenever there's fornication, they blame the man. Why? Because they believe that women are so stupid they can't help themselves. They believe that women are like children with functional sexual organs. That's how they view women. These dudes come out of the wombs of women. They love their daughters and their mothers and their sisters. But when it comes down, they view their wives as children. Why? Because of the nature that they have viewed women behave in. They believe that women are children because when they get married, they have to treat her like a sexualized child. The capacity for sex, but not the understanding of it. So when you get some big old strong worker from Sudan to do some of the country jobs out there, help take care of the farm, and then she goes out to this big old strong Sudanese guy at night and says, if you don't give me what I want, I'm gonna scream. Does this sound familiar, black folks? Oh yeah, this happens. This does happen. And sometimes these workers go missing. They're gone. They go there and then they're just gone. And what really happened will be that she went out there to him. She planned it stupidly like a little girl, but she really didn't care because she knew the culture and she knew that she wasn't going to be blamed for it. So she went out to these dudes, went out to his quarters at night somehow, got home late. The husband knew what was up, didn't blame her. Went to the guy, said, oh, we're going to do some work. We're going to take him out to this pasture away from the village, takes him out there, kills him, buries him, goes back home. Next morning, he wakes up, acts like all of a sudden his worker left and ran off, and then he asked the police to help him find this guy. Oh, he ran off. Anything missing? I haven't noticed anything missing yet, but, we'll check. We'll get back to you if we find anything missing. Oh, yeah, one of my camels was missing, or one of my goats was missing. He probably trying to sell it and, probably trying to sell it and get on a plane and get out of the country. He's probably trying to escape or something. They do this. They'll say stuff like this. This will happen. And why does this happen? It happens because you have some women who will behave so much like little girls with functioning sexual organs that they've convinced the men that they are little girls with functioning sexual organs of adults. They got these men believing it. And what does this do? It allows these women to convince these men in these little backwards country villages that they really aren't accountable for when they cheat with somebody else, that it really is the man's fault, so that she gets the extracurricular ding-a-ling and the man gets the punishment, turns up missing. Understand this, when this happens in these villages, that man is dead whether he agrees to give her the extracurricular ding-a-ling to keep it a secret or whether he doesn't. You got some men who say, all right, shut up, I'll give it to you, give me some time to get this thing working. Don't scream. Don't get me in trouble. My family's relying on me for money. And you got other men who say, no, you know what? You're married to somebody else. I got a family back home. I fear God. He's watching what we're doing. Go ahead and scream. And they get killed. That's what happens on the real. And once these women do this, it does not matter. Why? Because these women are not going to they're not going to hide this very well. When it becomes too difficult to hide it, they're just going to not hide it and let the man get killed. The husband will report that worker's missing. He'll get another Rakama allowed to him so he can bring in another foreign worker. And if she wants, the cycle will repeat itself. That's it. And the reason for this is because we are dealing with what we think are, in fact, women. And a lot of them are girls, but they're sitting up here trying to put on us that we ain't men. Now, if this type of thing goes on in a conservative nation like this, what the hell kind of game you think they set up and discussed in a very liberal nation like the one you're sitting in now listening to me? They set up and talked about all kinds of game in the hair salons because the law's not going to stop them. There's no force that's going to stop them from this. So, girl, look, you get him trying to prove his manhood. You ain't got to prove your womanhood. Girl, look, if you want more out of him and he ain't making enough, question his manhood. He'll try to go out and get some more. Girl, look, cut him off. Tell him he ain't enough of a man for that pussy right there. And I bet you he gonna come up with that ring you want. And see, I'm not talking about how they try to plot and scheme on guys that don't have even enough to pay basic rent and cable. I'm not talking about that. Because there are guys out there who legitimately don't have that much. But I'm not talking about the women that legitimately complain about having to struggle through something like that because he's irresponsible, not laid off. And the reason I'm not complaining about that is very simple. We understand. We understand when a woman gets upset because the apartment is cold in the winter and hot as hell in the summer. And ain't no cable and ain't nothing comfortable about the place because he can't afford better. And it ain't because he got laid off. We understand the difference between that and the other one. But I'm talking about the ones who legitimately do look at what he is doing and they don't care if it's not enough. And they still insist that there's got to be more. I'm talking about the ones that look at their standard of living and they expect it to just naturally increase every 6 months or so. Just natural, like he's just going to get a 30% pay raise every 6 months just because you want him to. You do have women like that. Like I say, little girls. You do have the ones who have these kinds of expectations simply because they're cute. So they think that's what's going to happen. And I'm telling you that's not what's going to happen. I'm telling you that no, heterosexual black men are going to face it worse than anybody else in the job market. And a lot of them say, there you go with those excuses. You ain't no real man. A real man gets out and gets it done. With what? The world's been built by real men who were celibate because they weren't paid enough. And when I say celibate, I'm talking about maritally and sexually. I mean, they didn't have sex or get married, but they did all this hard work. They just didn't get paid enough to justify you going ahead and giving them a little relief and getting some in return. That's what that was. And you got these ladies that they don't care about that. They don't want to hear that. Because they're not judging you by how hard you work. They're judging you by how much you bring home. And it's like I said, yesterday I made a mistake in the title. Today I'm going to correct it. When you were judged by whatever the hell it is you don't have, regardless of what you have, you're being judged by a little girl, not a woman. And if it's something you can improve upon, you can improve upon it, fine. That's the woman's preferences. But if it's something that you cannot improve upon because you've already improved upon something else, and you really being judged unfairly, you got judged by a little girl, and your only mistake was approaching her because you didn't know that she was still a little girl and not a grown woman. That's all it was. I hope that this has been a benefit. Black Horse signing, Black out. Assalamu alaikum.